lot has been said about investigative journalism since yesterday. Investigation basically is all about finding out, looking for, extracting. What are the other synonyms? So yeah, keep dropping them. Unwrapping, unveiling, digging. But you know, the fantastic thing about investigative journalism is that it is not all the time that you have to dig. Sometimes you just scratch because it's at the surface. Sometimes it's just there, looking at you, staring at you. But you have to look keenly to be able to find it. So while we think about digging and all of that, let us always keep it at the back of our minds that sometimes you just need to scratch and you'll be able to find something. We're going to be talking about what investigative reporting is, why do we have to investigate in journalism, the elements that make a report investigative, what makes it different from other forms of journalism, who carries out investigative journalism, sources of investigative stories, how to become an investigative journalist, and how to go about an investigative story. Next slide, please. So basically, we are talking about insights, strategies, and best practices that can help us become or transform into better investigators. So for the purpose of this paper, I'm sticking with the UNESCO definition of investigative reporting, and it says it is about exposing the truth about public interest issues. You know, those issues whose details are kept under wraps, deliberately or otherwise. Sometimes it is inadvertent, but those things are just under wraps by the people involved. It's all about evidence-based reporting. This makes it a vital counter-narrative to fake news. It's a way of redressing injustice, conveying human suffering, uncovering topics that are hidden either intentionally or unintentionally behind a mass of facts. It is not very common because of all of the efforts and time that goes into doing it. So a lot of people shy away from it because unlike other reports that you just do in 5-6 paragraphs and you are done, investigative journalism requires a lot more time, as sometimes you have a lead and you follow it for months, you know, before you get to the information you need to complete your story. Sometimes you have written a story and you just need to speak with a source to complete that story, and the story is just there on your computer. You are waiting for many months to track down that source. So because of the tedious nature of it, a lot of people shy away from it. Next slide. So why do organizations carry out investigative journalism? Why do organizations and individuals? So for organizations, it could be for commercial purpose to increase revenues, because they know that if they have this story on their platform, it's going to attract readership. A lot of people will come to their portal to read. A lot of people will buy their newspaper, so they carry out that story. Sometimes it is for ideological purposes, because the media is the fourth estate. So in keeping with that obligation, you want to investigate and uncover issues of injustice and all of that. And then for others, it is a mix of the two. It is both commercial and for ideological purposes. What makes a story investigative? What are the elements, in it? So you see that we have there that it requires in-depth research. It is systematic. It follows a process. It's not something that you just do haphazardly. You must start from a point, and that point is when you have either the story idea or the scoop, and then you begin to research and follow a sequence until you get to the point where you get the information the story is trying to bring out. So it's not something that you just do haphazardly and you go away with, you just go away. You must follow that process to get a good story. It requires rigorous interviews and fact checks. You have to interview a lot of sources to do your stories. And then sometimes even when you interview sources and they give you information or documents, you still need to fact check to be sure that what they have told you is correct. it pursues hypothesis. That means there must be something before you even start an investigative story at all. It is time intensive, it is costly. So these are the elements that investigative stories are all about. What tools do you use to tell an investigative story? So you have your text, which is your normal story that you tell. You have infographics, which give a pictorial view of a story. You have photos, you have graphs, and you also have charts. And these tools, especially graphs, charts, and infographics, when you are doing a data story, a story that has to do with a lot of numbers, these are very important tools for you to know how to use to be able to tell a very good story. Because these days, people's attention span is very short. So if you have plenty numbers, they could even confuse people. But when you reduce it to a chart or a graph, or you do an infographic that captures everything in a nutshell, somebody looks at it and they are able to understand your story better. When you are doing an investigative story, what are those things to avoid? You avoid content that is not relevant or adds value to the story. Sometimes when you research, you have plenty information that you don't even know what to do with it. So you have to, it behoves on you as the owner of the story to look at those things that are most important. You have to get into the reader's mind to be able to imagine the things that are that will be most important and use them, and leave out the facts that are not very relevant to the story. Then stories that are not true or fact-checked. When you get a lead, sometimes somebody gives you a scoop and it's false. So even when you get a scoop, even from your trusted sources, it is good to still check, to be double sure that this information you have is very correct before you go to press with it. And investigative journalism is not blackmail. Sometimes people start an investigation and then they happen on information that involves some people, and then instead of pursuing the story, they begin to blackmail the people that are involved in that story, making demands of them or one thing or the other. Investigation is not blackmail. And if you want to be a good investigative journalist, you have to disabuse your mind of that kind of a thing, because that's the kind of thing that makes investigation very risky. You will die very fast. Very, very fast. And end your career. Next slide. So investigative journalism is important because it focuses on bringing powerful individuals, officials, criminals, companies, and states to account. It highlights underrepresented populations. It gives them a voice, and ensures that they are treated with dignity and respect. It serves as a watchdog in the society, ensures that no one is above the law by exposing corruption and malpractice, promotes public interest by reporting on injustices, and provides an avenue to expose the wrongdoings of the rich and powerful elite that profits at the expense of the masses. A lot of the time, people do things and, they get away with it, but it is only courageous investigative journalists that are able to follow through some of these stories and bring, those very powerful people to book. Next. Why or how is investigative journalism different from other forms of journalism? It goes beyond the surface, involves digging up what is hidden, relies on the journalist's enterprise and initiative, as most investigative stories are the journalist's idea. So as an investigative journalist, you have to use your, what do they call it now? Use your head, initiative, a lot, because most of the stories are stories that you will generate by yourself from your environment. You look around, from stories that are breaking, you see, what you can follow up on to get, other stories. Investigative journalism does not just report scoops, it verifies them, entails the use of multiple sources, focuses on the public good, holds the powerful accountable, and requires more resources and effort. Next. These are the people that carry out investigative journalism. You have individuals, like all of us here. We can, on our own, do our individual investigative stories. Newsrooms can decide to do their investigations, and then consortium of newsrooms. Different newsrooms, that's different media organizations, can come together and investigate a story. We saw that happen in the case of Paradise and Panama Papers investigation, which brought together a consortium of 400 members under the auspices of International Consortium of Investigative Journalists to carry out investigation. And Premium Times was a member of that consortium. And we saw how they kept on reeling out stories from, from that investigation. And through that investigation, governments across the world were able to recover $1.2 billion from people that had fleeced government, especially through tax. So that is one of the advantages of investigative journalism. What are the sources of investigative journalism? You have the open source data. These are stories that you can find in books, newspapers, magazines. Those are follow-up stories on the internet, and and all of that. Those are just the open sources. But before you pick from an open source, you also have to ask yourself, how credible is this source? Has this source been consistent in giving out credible information online? There are people on the line, some online public office holders, influencers, or just ordinary individuals out there that usually drop hints about good stories on their, on their social media handles. People follow them and actually get scoops, from them for stories that they want to do. Then there are documents. You can get stories from documents, government documents, documents by private organizations. But when you get those documents, what do you do with them? You have to verify first. Sometimes people come to you with documents. They tell you, oh, this document is from this government agency or from this organization, and you can get a story from it. But when you get such documents, what do? You don't just fly with it. You need to check to be sure that the document is not forged. Then there are the human sources that you also get stories from. You have the eyewitnesses, those that witnessed an event that can give you an account of how it happened. There are also the secondary sources who may not be directly involved but are able to give you an account. Then also there are also digital sources. And the advantage of digital sources is that you can get information from anywhere in the world. They say the world is now a global village. With just a click of the button, you are able to access information anywhere at all in the world. How do you become an investigative journalist? One way to become an investigative journalist is through trainings, just like this one you're having here. You can also build a portfolio by entering contests. There are contests for investigative stories. Different foundations or organizations organize contests, and if you want to be a good investigative journalist, it's important to enter such contests, because the more you write, the better you get. So as you enter the contest, even sometimes you enter a contest and you don't win, but you are able to get feedback that tells you that this is what you need to improve on, and it helps you to make your writing better in subsequent times. You also have to either join a media house or work freelance to be an investigative journalist and develop interest in research and become an avid researcher. If you are lazy, you can't do investigative journalism. You have to research and read a lot. How do you go about an investigative story? When you have your scoop, which is the first step, what are the next steps that you need to take to be able to get your story done? You identify sources that are relevant to the story you are doing. So these are the sources you are going to either be researching to get information or interviewing. And some credible sources are international and local organizations like the WHO, World Bank, UN, social media handles of politicians and policymakers and the likes. When you go to UNICEF, UN, and all those, the websites of those international organizations, there's a lot of data there that you can mine to do your investigative stories, or that you can use to buttress stories that you are doing, because they do a lot of research and there's a lot of information there. So after you have collated that data, how do you handle the data? You analyze and extract the information that is relevant to you by juxtaposing past events with the present. This can even lead you to a story. E.g., for instance, what a prominent person said before on an issue and what they are saying currently on the same issue can be used to do a story. It's just like it's just like an ordinary story. It doesn't seem like an investigation, but it is indeed an investigation, because if somebody said something 10 years ago and today on the same topic he's saying something else, and you are able to go back 10 years in time and bring what he said to juxtapose with what he's saying today, you get a good story to say. Then you analyze your data by description, answering the 4 W's and the H. You carry out a descriptive analysis of the data you have to be able to tell a very good story. You describe events in a matter that somebody is reading your story and he feels like he's part of, he can see himself in the scene, like he witnessed, what is happening. And then there are some reports that you do that are also able to predict what will happen in the future. And this kind of reports are done by collating data that has happened. If there has been a sequence over time, and you collate all that data, you can use it to tell a story that predicts what will happen in the future. For instance, there's this MPC meeting that CBN does. People, analysts or some financial correspondents would do a story and tell you that because they have been doing it like this, because it has been like this in the past months, and for these reasons, they are going to maintain it like that even at this meeting they are holding. And when the meeting ends and the communique comes out, you find that it is exactly as was written by those reporters, as if they had an insight into what was happening. But it's just investigation based on the trend. Those are the elements to look out for if you want to be a good investigative journalist. Those are the things you need to do. That's the way you handle your sources or the information you collate for your story. Feature stories are investigative stories, because when you are writing features, you investigate. So investigation is not all about unearthing corruption or filth or anything earth-shaking. It must not be earth-shaking stories. The features you do are investigative stories, because you generate those ideas, you look around, you find feature story ideas, you go out there, you investigate, you find out what is happening, you look for the relevant sources to talk to. If you have to, sometimes you travel to communities, you talk to traditional rulers, you talk to members of the communities, you get information from them, you come back to government to say, okay, government, why is this thing like this? Sometimes after you have heard from the government, you even have to go back to the community because there's a new information you got from the government angle that you still need to go back to the community to clarify or verify and all. So your feature stories are also investigative stories. So please disabuse your mind of the fact that every investigative story has to be earth-shaking. Oh yeah, if you write, it must be something that will bring down a minister, or something that if you write, EFCC have to go after somebody, or the DSS must go and investigate somebody because of a story you wrote. No, it's not all about that. Sometimes something as little as writing about the bad road in a community, and the community is able to attract the attention of government, is a positive investigative story. Not all investigative stories have to be negative.
Ẹ̀kọ́ ní ìpìlẹ̀ ìdàgbàsókè gbogbo àwùjọ. Ipò wo ni àwọn alákòóso FCT gbé ètò ẹ̀kọ́ sí gan? Èló ni owó tí wọ́n yà sọ́tọ̀ fún nínú ètò ìṣúná? Báwo ni wọ́n ṣe ná owó tí wọ́n yà sọ́tọ̀ fún? Kí ni ìgbéléwọ̀n àwọn akẹ́kọ̀ọ́, olùkọ́ni àti àwọn akẹ́kọ̀ọ́ gboyè tí àwọn ilé ẹ̀kọ́ gíga wa ń pèsè gan? Fún àwọn ìdáhùn lóríṣiríṣi, darapọ̀ mọ́ wa lórí ètò Leaves and Worms, ètò akọ́nilọ́gbọ́n àti ìlanilọ́yẹ tí yóò máa wáyé sí ojú ìwòran yín ní ọ̀sẹ̀ọ̀sẹ̀ lórí ẹ̀rọ móhùnmáwòrán AD4 TV Radio, Wọlé Ṣóyínká Center for Investigative Journalism pẹ̀lú àtìlẹ́yìn MacArthur Foundation ló ṣe onígbọ̀wọ́ rẹ̀. Ẹ má pàdánù rẹ̀ o.
Right, so we are going into the kernel of the paper now, which is the digital age and what it has to do with investigative journalism, the opportunities it presents for us as reporters, and the challenges that we'll encounter. Next. All right. So you will all agree with me that since the turn of the digital age, journalism is no longer as we used to know it, and it is increasingly becoming so. The internet and all of the things on it are giving what we call traditional media a run for our money. Before maybe let's say maybe 10 or 15 years ago, newspaper was the ultimate, TV was the ultimate, radio was the ultimate, but now the internet is the ultimate. People get their news online. They don't even bother with newspapers or TV. Even they watch TV from their smartphones. They listen to radio from their smartphones. So there's been a lot of interruption, which has changed the way we practice journalism. And media houses have tried to cut costs, especially newspapers. They've tried to keep their costs very low in order to be able to stay afloat. And a lot of things have had to go. So you find that media houses that were sponsoring reporters to carry out investigative stories are no longer doing that, because the resources they have are slim, and they have a lot of issues that are competing for the slim resources. So investigative journalism is one of the things that have had to take the the cut for it. But in all of this, the question to ask is, where does investigative journalism fit in the digital age? No doubt it comes with a lot of unique transformative opportunities and challenges which investigative journalists have to face. The proliferation of digital platforms and technological advancements present a vast array of tools and resources to uncover and report critical stories. So while it has done us what we'll call a disservice, it has also helped to make the job easier in some respects because of the tools that it presents to help us do our job. Investigative reporting has evolved from the previously known traditional methods. Most of what we have now is data-driven investigations and collaborations that newspapers or journalists do to be able to get stories done. And some of the tools that are used to do this, the use of open source intelligence. We talked about open source before, open sources that you can use to investigate before, things that you find on the internet, open sources like websites, social media handles of organizations or prominent people. Those are some of the open sources that you can utilize to do your story. Data visualization, we talked about that earlier also. Infographics, charts, graphs, and the likes. And then there's also the social media monitoring. These days, organizations issue their press releases on Twitter or Facebook. So if you are covering a beat, for instance, you have to follow them on their social media platforms. And before you go to, when you wake up, you check there first. Before you, in the course of the day, you keep on refreshing and checking. Before you go to bed, last thing at night, you check, because that is where they send their stories now. So as an investigative journalist, you need to leverage technology, embrace artificial intelligence, which is the new big thing. Yeah, which is the new big thing. You have to embrace it and know how to use it to help you get your job done. It's not like you are going to leave your job for AI to do, or ask what they call it, chat GPT to write stories or write features for you. No, but you need to be aware, because you operate in this era. You need to be aware that these things exist, and how can you make use of them to make your job better, or not make use of them. You know, yeah, it's your choice. The digital age of journalism comes with a lot of challenges. There is a lot of information out there. There is also a lot of misinformation and disinformation. You find that there is a lot of fake news out there on the internet, which makes fact checking very important, because as an investigative journalist, if you become the kind of journalist that people no longer trust your stories, then you have lost credibility. Nobody believes anything you say. If you have done one story once, they fact check you, you are wrong. You do another one, it is fact checked, you are wrong. Then you know that you are beginning to lose your credibility. So when you see people post pictures and claim that this picture was taken at this place on this date, you should be able to check to be sure that that picture was actually taken there. And a lot of the fake news comes in terms of pictures or videos. You see some videos of events that happened in Sudan, and they will tell you that they are killing people on Kubwa Road. They are killing people on Kubwa Road. Ruti, don't go home today. Oh. Their route will go and write that there's crisis on Kubwa Road. That in fact she's stranded. She cannot go home. Meanwhile, it is something that happened in South Sudan 5 years ago. Not even currently. And then there's also the issue of data privacy and security. When you were in sourcing for information on the internet, you have to also be aware of the ethical considerations when you are handling the sensitive data that you get, and protecting sources in the digital realm. So somebody sends you information through WhatsApp or through SMS or email or some other means on the internet. You have to protect the source just the same way you protect your other sources that you interact with physically, per the ethics of the profession, because the ethics teaches you that you have to protect your source with your life. So whether you are getting information through digital sources, if you need to keep those sources anonymous, you have to do that and protect the integrity of those sources. And that also means that as an investigative journalist, the security of your devices, your laptop, your phone, your flash drive, or other gadgets that you use to get information, your recorder, all those things, you have to secure them, because if somebody gets a hold of them, the person will be able to get information that shouldn't go out to another person, or through those gadgets they'll be able to, if they're able to get access to your email, for instance, or your WhatsApp, and somebody shared something with you in confidence, they'll be able to see that information. And it may have been inadvertent that they got hold of that thing, and they got to know that this is your source. But I mean, if you have become the kind of journalist that sources are afraid of, they say, don't talk to Ruth, don't talk to Novlin. When you talk to her, she will go and tell everybody that you are the one that gave her the scoop. That means you have killed yourself already. You can only be writing press releases going forward. Yes. Then I talked about that, cyber threats and digital attacks. You have to secure your gadgets. Then there's also the legal challenges. There are implications for sourcing information online, and also even sharing information online. So you have to be aware of some of those things. Privacy laws, what do the privacy laws say? In as much as somebody has put information out there on the internet. Sometimes I get information from people's Facebook posts or Twitter posts, but I send them a message to say, you posted this thing and I like your opinion on the issue. I want to use it for a report that I am doing. Can I use it? And the person says, yes, you can go ahead, or no, it is only for Facebook or for Twitter. I don't want it published elsewhere. So you still have to respect people's privacy in as much as they have put the information out there. If they do not want it outside of that space, that should be respected. And Nigeria has a cybercrime law. Even on Facebook, you still have your privacy. You can do your privacy settings. You share a post and you want only your friends to see it. You want your friends and their friends to see it. You want the general public to see it. You want everybody to see it apart from what's your name? You want everybody to see it apart from Living because he talks too much. If he sees it, he's going he's going to tell everybody. So you set it, you say everybody apart from. Exactly. You know? So okay.
One Irish woman who is an artist invited me to cover her event, her exhibition. I did interview both herself and some other curators that came, and I went back home and I did a feature story. I was looking for the pictures I took there wasn't good enough for publication, so I went to her Facebook page and lifted one of the pictures which she shared and published that story. When she saw it, she said, hey, why should I do that without taking permission from her?
Meanwhile, she invited you to the event.
Meanwhile, she invited me to the event and didn't give me even a dime. I didn't ask. So the feature story, full page I did for her, I was even expecting her to appreciate me for it. But in turn, she attacked me. So I learned my lesson. She even insisted that I must apologize to her. And blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, please, let me talk to my editors. When I talked to my editors, they looked at what I have done. They said, no. If she wants me to redo the publication again, she should write officially. She refused to write, and that was how the thing ended. But I learned my lesson.
If you have not gone to press, you can just take action on the story. If the story has already gone out there, well, the story has already gone. The person can deny that they did not give you consent. That is why it is also important sometimes to get written consent. And SMS, WhatsApp, email, they are very, very good, ways of documenting. So when you want to, let me say, hold somebody in a corner, send them a text message, let them reply, or send a WhatsApp, or send an email. You can do a voice record of your discussion, and it's a document. But also, when you are recording people, it has to be with their consent. People call you, you start recording, you can be sued. When an issue comes up, the person will say that they did not give you the right to record them, and it becomes a crime. You have infringed their rights. That's a dilemma you face. Do you know that if you interview me today and I give my opinion on an issue and you keep it as Kate's opinion, then 2 years later you are doing a related story, you cannot use that interview. You have to go back to me to check if my views have changed, if my views are still the same as they were, because I'm entitled to changing my mind at any time. I can give you the interview now. Before you reach your office, I've changed my mind. Anything could have happened. So you always have to check to be sure, because in doing this business, at the end of it all, you are also trying to preserve yourself and not put yourself in harm's way in any way. Don't become the news. Of course, it can help you to defend yourself in some cases. But if the person decides to press charges based on the fact that they did not authorize you, the person will be within their rights as well. So it's a delicate balance. So the internet may have changed journalism, disrupted some forms of reporting, but it has also presented many opportunities. It is the good, the bad, the ugly. It's a mixed grill. So there are opportunities for us. So you see that rather than compete, newspapers are now collaborating, and they are collaborating across borders. because the internet has made that possible. You are in Nigeria, other people are in their own 20 other countries. But because of the digital space, you are able to collaborate and get stories done. You are able to share information, analyze data, distribute information without recourse to traditional media. I spoke about that before. Nobody is writing paper press releases to move from one newsroom to the other to distribute anymore. Now, the press releases are sent via email, or some don't even bother to do that. They just post it on their social media. If you find it there, good and fine. If you don't check social media before you go to bed, tomorrow morning you receive query for missing story. That, yeah. Then web-based, okay, digital platforms also have space for longer stories where newspapers do not. So unlike newspapers where you can write a 15-paragraph political story, and when the story gets to your editor, he thinks that it qualifies as a 3-paragraph brief because he doesn't have space. He has 1,000 stories and space for 100. So he has to slash, prioritize, and all of that. But in as much as the internet has infinite space for posting stories, do you now begin to write unnecessarily long stories because there is space? No. Research says that the average attention span is now 8 seconds. So nobody has time to read your 4-page feature. Before, when we started writing features, Ruth knows, in our office then, you will do center spread, or you even serialize. You know, till the next week, they publish 2 pages this week. Next week you continue again, or you know. But now nobody has time to read all that, especially when they are reading from their devices. As you are reading, Auntie Eve's WhatsApp message has entered, and you know that Auntie Eve, and you know that Auntie Eve always bring jolly. So you immediately switch from that page to read her WhatsApp message. Then as you are replying her WhatsApp message, somebody has commented on your Facebook post. You want to go and see their comment. So before you know it, 15 apps are open on your phone. Will you remember to go back and complete that story? Unless it is something, you know, that is very important to you, you won't even remember. So you have to keep your stories short and precise. Use the most important information first. Just go straight to the point and let the reader enjoy what you are reading and what you have written. Yeah, and then access to there's also access to user-generated content. Now, traditional journalists get leads from social media. Even some future ideas, you get it from social media. Somebody is in one community, something is happening there. He records it and posts it on the internet. A journalist sees it and decides to follow up to get a story done. So those are the user-generated contents we talk about. Then the use of internet for research, emails to send messages, SMS, and the likes. Those are some of the opportunities that the digital age has also presented. Before now, if an organization has a press conference, they will write a letter to the newsroom, address it to the editor or the news editor. Then they will send somebody in a taxi. He will move from a dispatcher. He will move from one newsroom to the other, distributing that invitation. You know, but now you can send an SMS to any editor or to a reporter, and they are there at your event. You don't necessarily need to go there. So those are some of the dividends of the digital age. So what are the best practices for digital investigative journalism? You have to verify all online sources to ensure they are credible and the information they push out is authentic. Protect sources and anonymity and safety of whistleblowers and informants. Protect sources, I read that already. Uphold journalistic ethics, standards, and principles in the face of rapid information dissemination. In all of this, remember that you are guided by a code of ethics that you need to adhere to, whether you are operating digitally or analog. The ethics are the same. They remain the same, they remain unchanged. And collaborate to go far. Where you cannot go by yourself, somebody else can go for you if you are collaborating with them. And digitization makes this possible. The digital age has come with transformation and disruption in the way investigative journalism is carried out. Investigative journalists can survive in this era by adopting ethical practices, leveraging digital tools, fostering collaborative efforts. Investigative journalists can uncover groundbreaking stories and uphold the fundamental role of journalism in safeguarding democracy. There are many online platforms in Nigeria dedicated to various forms of investigative reporting. You have ICIR, FIJ, Premium Times, and the likes. And these organizations are creatively finding ways, to get their business done, by ways of sponsorship of investigative reports. Sometimes they get donor agencies to fund them to do their reports. They also have paywalls where people have to subscribe to be able to access investigative stories, even though paywalls have been criticized that they exclude people. That information should be for everybody, but paywalls exclude some people. That's another thing altogether. But people also donate to make investigative journalism possible. You find that some organizations, when you read their stories, at the end of the story, there's a footnote there asking you to support the work that they do through donations. Then there is the donor funding, but donor funding also has its own challenges because of influence. The donor can influence what you do. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. So when they fund you, they tell you the direction in which to go. You can't just do anything with their money. Part of honor, be ethical in what you do. Stay away from blackmail. I said it before in the first part of the paper. Blackmail, when people get scoops and they think that they want to use these scoops to make money, the person you are collecting money from is the person that will kill you. He's the same person that will go after you, because they know that blackmailers never stop. So if he pays you the first time, he may not want to pay you the next time, because if he knows that you may want to come back again. So the best way is to do away with you. But when you have your facts and you do your good stories, you stand by your facts. Anywhere they call you, anywhere you go to, you say, I stand by what I said. Even when you go to court, you will win. Alhaji told us yesterday how many times he has gone to court. He has even been locked with Boko Haram, but he came out. Even me, I've been arrested before because of story that I did. It's imperative to note that while methods of conducting investigative reports may have changed in the digital age, the aim remains the same: revealing hidden truths to keep society informed enough to hold those in power accountable, expose situations to attract the attention of government, and bring about development and social justice. With these few points of mine, I hope I have been able to convince you that there are opportunities and challenges on the internet, and that as a journalist, you have to be able to navigate the waters to be able to do your job very, very well. Thank you.
AD4 TV Radio, we focus on education with emphasis on research and innovation, science and technology, women and girl child education, children, health, youth and sports, socio-political and economic reforms, security, environment, entrepreneurship, and entertainment. We'll give you information at your fingertips. Learn on the go. Follow AD4 TV Radio on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. AD4 TV Radio, reliable and credible.
We love you, AD4. TV.